Hello everybody, David Schuster here. In today's video, we're going to discuss the rise in the United States of populism. It is resonating with average Americans, even as the political elite seem to be struggling to understand why the movement has so much impact.
Look, you can't underestimate also Hillary Clinton herself. And what everybody says is that, as a person and as a politician, well, I guess when she gets the job, she is much more impressive than she is as a candidate. And you have this quote about how she didn't understand some things, and this is in Shattered, page 145. I don't understand what's happening with the country. I can't get my arms around it.
There's this rise of populism going on around her, and there she is on a plane confiding to one of her closest confidants and a longtime aide of the Clintons. I can't really grasp what's happening. And here she is opposing Bernie Sanders in the primary, who is filling up, arenas, and people are really excited for his campaign. And then in the general, she'll face Donald Trump, who's doing the same thing, and she doesn't quite understand what's happening.
In 2016, Hillary Clinton found herself navigating a challenging political landscape wedged between two populist movements that captivated distinct voter bases. On one side, Bernie Sanders galvanized progressives with his call for economic reform, targeting wealth inequality and proposing bold measures like Medicare for all and free college tuition. The Sanders campaign drew huge, enthusiastic crowds and energized younger voters, many of whom viewed Clinton as too closely tied to the political establishment. On the other side, Donald Trump's brand of right-wing populism tapped into frustration with globalization, immigration, and political elites. Trump's rhetoric and policies appealed to disaffected voters in key swing states, many of whom felt left behind by economic shifts and alienated by Washington politics. Clinton's challenge was to appeal to a broad coalition, uniting traditional Democrats, progressives, and moderates, while countering the anti-establishment momentum of both Sanders and Trump. This dynamic left the Clinton campaign trying to bridge gaps between factions within her own party while responding to Trump's unprecedented style and populist appeal, which reshaped the political discourse in ways that were hard to counter. In hindsight, 2016 wasn't just an election, it was a reckoning, a seismic shift that redefined how presidential power is sought and won in the United States. The old strategies of political campaigns, carefully calibrated messaging, reliance on party loyalty, and appeals to institutional trust, were upended by the raw emotional force of populism. Since then, populism has become the driving force of U.S. presidential elections, reshaping the battlefield and forcing candidates to adapt or risk irrelevance. Clearly, in 2024, Kamala Harris didn't do enough to convince voters that she was a candidate of change. So even though some of her economic ideas had some populist appeal, Harris was dragged down by the perception, fair or not, that she was part of the status quo. It underscores that Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump in 2016 were trailblazers. Sanders lit a fire among progressives with promises of dramatic change, railing against billionaires and Wall Street. Trump utilized a different brand of populism, mobilizing those who felt forgotten by globalization and demographic change. In the political analyst world, there is a feeling that the old political establishment, which was crumbling for several years, has finally been defeated, but it still has some remnants that keep corrupting the U.S. political system. For example, the amount of money sloshing through politics is unprecedented. There are literally no limits through PAC organizations and the like on the wealthiest people and corporations buying influence. And that influence outweighs the leverage of most ordinary Americans. Changing that dynamic is practically impossible because in order for campaign finance reforms to get through, the change would have to get past the well-heeled power of the media. That's right, the media. The industry that benefits the most from billions of dollars in campaign ad dollars is the same group that brings you the news on broadcast, cable, and streaming. Broadcasters, streamers, and the like pay for their news and analysis operations through advertisements, and a huge portion comes from political ads. The media is not about to give this up, so you're not going to see much of the media talk about or endorse efforts to institute campaign finance reform. Another obstacle to change in the United States involves the trillion-dollar military industrial complex. The annual Pentagon budget is about $850 billion, and many of the weapons manufacturers make hundreds of billions of dollars more through other government agencies. Here, though, we see some unity on the far right and the progressive left. As the USA Today headline noted recently, Bernie Sanders takes aim at defense spending. Elon Musk is right. Musk has been tasked by Donald Trump with gutting government spending and cutting it. The Pentagon has failed a string of audits and cannot seem to keep track of billions of dollars. For Sanders, who believes the United States should spend less on the military and perhaps more on things like education, there could be an opportunity in teaming up on part of this with Elon Musk. The problem Elon Musk has is that any Pentagon budget cuts would have to get past Donald Trump. Still, even TYT's Cenk Uygur may have identified some common ground with the Trump administration. Cenk recently wrote on X, "Hey Elon Musk, put me in charge of the Pentagon, all slash 400 billion easy. That will get you 20% to your goal of 2 trillion in cuts right out of the gate. I went to Wharton 3 years before you. I own a media company, so I know how to run a business. If you really want to cut, put me in, coach." Musk wrote, "Specific suggestions are welcome." Cenk replied, "As you know, you need to see the line items in the budget, but I have one suggestion already. The generals are not allowed to get a job with defense contractors for 10 years. They authorize so much wasteful spending because they are going to get hired by those same companies." Donald Trump Jr. wrote, "That's a great idea that has been discussed." The exchange underscores that there are some areas of common ground on the right and the left, and the process of opening the dialogue has begun. In my view, there will be plenty of opportunities to find common ground, and not just when it comes to wasteful military spending. The fundamental shifts in our economy and the uncertainty that so many Americans feel right now is related to modernization. An Oxford study a few years ago found that because of high tech, things like robots and artificial intelligence, half of all the jobs that exist today will not be around in 20 years. There will be some new jobs created, but we don't even have names for them yet. Autonomous vehicle maintainer instead of what used to be known as car mechanic. The bottom line is that change is happening so quickly, it is transforming our communities and our work in record time. And it's creating, for a lot of people and their communities, incredible instability and uncertainty. How do we get retrained for the jobs of the future? Where do we go for that? Who pays for it all? These are issues that are non-political. And there are huge opportunities for bipartisan solutions. But the flip side is that if our government and leaders do not find some solutions, the public distrust of all things in our society, media, education, government, and politics, will be even more intense. Throughout history, most nations crumble when the middle class disappears and the gap between rich and poor keeps growing. That's the path America is on now. But there are ways we can come together to change things, restore some faith and unity in our nation, and answer the growing calls of populism. I'm David Schuster. Thanks for joining us.